on our Season 1 leaderboard here. I know he wants to go back to that Players' Championship. Made a great run, got knocked out by Reed Duke, and if you're going to get knocked out by somebody.
Could do a lot worse.
Kennen Haas is going to start things off here in round number 1 of our Season 1 Invitational with a Mystic Monastery. Dylan Donegan will do the same. Both players starting with a land that does enter the battlefield tapped. We'll see how Haas wants to move forward. There is a Shivan Reef. He's got 2 mana, and he's got a Soulfire Grandmaster. Now, this card really made an appearance really off of Ben Stark and his finish at Grand Prix Memphis, getting second place. There were 4 copies of it in his Mardu deck.
The early returns on this card during the Open Series were not that promising. We saw a copy here, a copy there, no real big success. But as you mentioned, Ben Stark at Grand Prix Memphis started putting 4 copies of this card on the map, and now we see it all over the place.
Now, Donegan just plays Nylon and passes the turn back. We'll see if Haas does want to attack, and he will attack with Soulfire Grandmaster. We'll see if Donegan does have a card like Raise the Alarm here, and he will cast it. So 2 soldier tokens will be on the way. And you have to imagine there'll be an attempt at a trade. We'll see if Haas does have an answer to this exchange.
Yeah, some removal spells in Kennen's deck and 2 main deck copies of Negate. So he's got some answers here. Also, Valorous Stance to protect his creature.
Well, he has something, and he will go with Valorous Stance to protect the Soulfire Grandmaster. Of course, he will gain 2 life in this exchange. So he wins that battle. Does have a land to play post-combat in Temple of Enlightenment. Now it's time to scry. Take a look at the top card. One thing to keep in mind, too, about this particular tournament and Dragonstark here, it's not a small set that we added. We had about 260 cards.
Yeah, and already we're seeing a lot of that content get incorporated in these decks.
Donegan will untap. It's time for him to take his 3rd turn.
What's curious about the start here from Kennen is that it has all the appearances of being some sort of Jeskai aggro, Jeskai token strategy himself, but he is anything but.
There's Jeskai Ascendancy. Donegan will pass the turn back. Does have to take 1 to cast it, thanks to Battlefield Forge. So it's very clear what Donegan's up to.
Yep.
Haas, more of a Jeskai control deck than a Jeskai Ascendancy deck, as he does serve in here with the Grandmaster yet again. Donegan doesn't know that yet. I'm not sure if there will be anything that really unveils that. Looks like Kennen considering sacrificing his Flooded Strand, and he will. So he'll go down to 23. Islander or Plains coming. And it looks like it may be a Plains, though. Haas is a little unsure, and he will go with the Plains.
Doesn't make a huge difference. His deck does have some double blue spells he could potentially want to chain together in the same turn.
Haas wanting to sacrifice that right away before passing the turn back. So we're going to go back Donegan's way for his 4th turn of the game.
And the preemptive sacking here might give Dylan some pause because it sort of indicates that Kennen wants the mana ready to go and doesn't want to get into some sort of counter or instant speed exchange with the Flooded Strand still unavailable.
Dragon Fodder is a spell that's been placed on the stack. This will allow Donegan to activate his Ascendancy. Discard a copy of Treasure Cruise. Now 2 goblins are in. Temple of Triumph is the land. Donegan will scry. The top card will go to the bottom. Dylan happy to pass the turn back. Haas will play our first Anticipate.
Of many.
I imagine that is true. Take a look at the top 3 cards. Take 1 with them. The rest will go to the bottom.
If you are a blue player who likes drawing cards, this has been a pretty good year for you.
Not bad.
I mean, the Treasure Cruise ban kind of stinks, but
you got Dig Through Time and Anticipate to work with. Jace's Ingenuity if you're really feeling it. Haas going to survey some things here. You know how dangerous this Jeskai token set can be when it has an Ascendancy out there. Does not take long.
Yeah, at this point, I think Kennen needs to find tools like Dig Through Times of his own, because 1-for-1 removal trades are not going to help him weather the storm of Ascendancy.
Temple of Enlightenment was the land there for Haas. He left a Lightning Strike on top of his deck, so that should be a draw step next turn. Move back Donegan's way. 2 Goblin tokens and an active Ascendancy. We saw in Seattle this Season 4 Invitational what Dylan is capable of when he has an Ascendancy in play. He'll start by playing in Temple of Epiphany, excuse me.
Kennen, I think, hoping to get to next turn with that Soulfire Grandmaster in play, not even offering it up for a trade, but hard to imagine it gets the next turn with the amount of removal that's in Dylan's deck. And now, Kennen with 5 mana in play, going to 6 next turn is threatening to start to loop some powerful things. So I believe if Dylan can get this off the table, he'll make a stab at it.
Looks like it might be an attempt to stoke the flames now, and it will be. Targeting the Grandmaster, trigger the Ascendancy. The creatures, of course, will untap and get +1/+1, so those goblins are 2/2s right now. Donegan does need to draw and discard from the Ascendancy, which he will choose to do. Discard another copy of Treasure Cruise. Seems like he's a little glutted on those.
Probably. I mean, at this point, he's getting so close to being able to cast it on the cheap that I assume he's keeping one and just getting rid of the extras.
Grandmaster bites the dust. Tokens are coming in here for 4 points of damage. And it looks like that's going to work. Though Haas is considering some things here, as is Donegan. Now Donegan's going to play and anticipate before damage. Wants to get a little bit more in. He'll start by drawing, discarding a mountain. Now he'll get to look at the top 3, take a card, rest will go to the bottom.
Ascendancy is a delight.
It is something. If you can get that down on a stable board, even sometimes it can catch you up.
Yep. And you can see the influence already of the new tools available to Dylan here, with Anticipate and Dragon Fodder both helping just lower the curve.
Well, now we have ourselves an Ojitai's
little
command.
Ojitai's command action here.
You just never know what's going to happen. It's so much fun.
So I imagine we're using the return a creature mode as one of the 2 things that's going on here.
Perhaps gain 4 life as well.
You can see drawing a card here.
That's good eye.
Kennen also playing with Nyx Fleece Ram this weekend. Probably just an anti-beatdown card that also gives him a little more utility with the Ojitai's command.
He does opt to return the Soulfire Grandmaster and draw a card. There's the 6 land. That's a Flood Strike. He's going to sacrifice that right away. We might see right away here Lightning Strike with rebuy.
Yep. He's got to contain the board as much as possible. He doesn't want to play on Dylan's turn with mana at the ready and Ascendancy in play.
Oh, look at that Grandmaster feeling frisky. Looks like an innocent attack, doesn't it?
We've seen Kennen steal some wins out of nowhere quite a few times,
Yes,
mostly in Legacy,
Yep.
but important to not count him out.
Now he'll pass the turn back. Donegan, no interest in trying to block. So Haas with 6 mana up, Soulfire Grandmaster out there, Lightning Strike in hand, so the ability to cast and rebuy that, and of course gain some life as well. A Treasure Cruise here for Donegan doesn't come as much of a surprise, given that he's already discarded 2.
Kennen's deck here with a lot of cheap removal spells to play alongside Soulfire Grandmaster to try to set up this loop. So he's got 3 copies of Lightning Strike, 3 copies of Roast, and 2 copies of Negate. Also a Valorous stance that we've already seen. So trying to play with as much reasonable 2-mana stuff as possible to try to get into this kind of spot with Soulfire Grandmaster.
The Ascendancy trigger did resolve, but Haas is going to fight over the Treasure Cruise, so he's going to cast Dissolve. And that'll work. Top card goes to the bottom from the scry very, very quickly. Donegan reaching for mana very quickly. He will go with Hordling Outburst. Trigger yet again. Draw and discard, Temple of Triumph. Another Dissolve. Very timely there for Haas. He'll have to take no damage to cast it. Mana lining up very well here for Kennen. Top card goes to the bottom yet again.
The problem with all of this is if Dylan has some removal spell for the Soulfire Grandmaster, which appears he does, it's hard to beat the tokens deck with 1-for-1 trades when Ascendancy's in play.
Keep in mind, those tokens are pretty big now, too.
Yeah.
Those are 2 4/4s that got into the red zone. So that was an attack for 8. Haas is down to 10.
Now,
Go ahead.
Dig Through Time is one of the cards here that can help Kennen pull back into this.
Well, here it is.
The 1-for-1 trades, those only buy him time.
Yeah.
But Dig Through Time can maybe get him to a spot where he can overpower this board.
Ascendancy just does such a nice job of filtering Donegan's draws to make sure he draws good stuff the rest of the game.
It makes all of his threats enormous. It's just a huge source of inevitability, and I do not believe that Kennen can get it off the table, at least game 1, once it resolves.
That'll be a bit of an issue.
He's got 4 dissolves, he's got some negates, he can counter it, but once it's in, I think it's just in.
Well, Haas is going to take a look at the top 7 and take 2 with him from this Dig Through Time. Kennen has to proceed pretty carefully because it is very realistic for him to die next turn.
Yeah.
I don't think that would surprise anybody. Disdainful Stroke is one of the cards that he's looking at. It must be a pretty difficult decision if Haas anticipates another one. Looks like he's happy enough. Though he might reconsider some things, and he will. He'll go back to the well.
Well, it looks like he's looking at Dragon Lord Ojutai. He's got one in his main deck. But I don't know if he can cast it this turn, and I don't know if he can anticipate getting another turn to cast it if he doesn't cast it this turn.
Does look like he does have a copy of Ojutai's command in hand yet again. Does have 3 copies in his main deck. He's reaching for 4 mana here. Yep. So Ojutai's command yet again, going to bring back the Grandmaster. Looks like he might be gaining 4 life this go around.
Yeah, he's just trying to buy himself enough time, I think, to get to Ojutai and also have removal in the same turn or some sequence like that where he can realistically block and then try to come back the following turn.
Well, he head back Donegan's way. One thing you can tell about Kennen's deck, though, gains a decent amount of life.
Does. Oh, for sure. I think Kennen's deck is probably awesome against linear aggressive strategies.
Yeah.
Just a lot of removal, a lot of very good blockers. I think he's also got some tools in this matchup. It's just Ascendancy's overpowering him right now. That's all.
Dylan does have a copy of Stoke the Flames in hand. Be interesting to see how he wants to use it. Looks like he's just going to start off by getting Soulfire Grandmaster off of the table. This will allow him to draw and discard yet again. Hoarding Outburst and Jeskai Ascendancy are the cards that he's currently holding.
And this is a pretty scary spot here for Dylan, sitting on his side of the table, because Kennen just elected to gain 4 instead of drawing a card. When your opponent does that, they're usually implying, I've got something really good next turn, and I'm just trying to survive. So now Dylan's got to figure out what exactly he's playing around. And you can tell he's looking right now, I believe, at Ascendancy and Hoarding Outburst, and he just doesn't know, am I getting hit with a sweeper next turn? Is there some huge threat coming? It's not totally clear. Kennen's deck has done enough awkward stuff and has shown enough of a range of possibilities that Dylan can't be sure exactly what he's playing against.
Yeah, the gain 4 life, I think, is really the tell. Because if he does draw a card, it's like, okay, you're clearly trying to search for something.
Yeah.
But if you're gaining 4 life, you're happy with the cards that you found from Dig Through Time,
Yeah,
but you can't cast them yet?
He's saying, I've got the ability to come back from this.
And Dylan won't even cast his Whirling Outburst this turn.
Exactly, because Dylan is worried about something like end hostilities because he's not totally sure what's going on in Kennen's deck, and it looks like something that could be playing with end hostilities. And the life gain there from the last turn implies that Kennen's got some big play this turn.
Well, it's no sweeper, but it's still a pretty big play.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. It's not end hostilities, but this might actually probably is better in this spot.
It is the debut of Dragon Lord Ojutai. The 5/4. Hexproof as long as it's untapped. And deals combat damage to a player. Look at the top 3. You basically anticipate. That's a short version of it.
Yep. And how much better is Dylan's spot here if he cast the Hoarding Outburst this last turn instead of this turn?
It is conceivable that Kennen would be dead.
But Dylan just doesn't know for sure what's going on in Kennen's deck, and so he had to slow play it a little bit. And now it looks likely that Kennen's going to untap with Dragon Lord Ojutai and play and maybe have the ability to attack.
Hoarding Outburst is here. These will attack. A very, very quick block. 2 damage will come through. Haas will go down to 8. Donegan will pass the turn back. Ascendancy has gotten him this far. Haas looking to stabilize.
You can see his hand right now. He's just picked up a Nyx Place Ram. He has a Lightning Strike in his hand. He's going to be able, I think he's going to be able to go on the offensive this turn. Of course, it's risky. He may die. But I think he's got enough protection here where he can start putting together some attacks.
You know, I like potentially going on the offensive, and if you find a Soulfire Grandmaster, things get a lot easier. Now, if he has a Grandmaster in his hand, things get pretty easy too. I'm going to start by deploying a Nyx Fleece Ram. Might just want to keep playing defense.
And this is very awkward for Dylan because he made that attack last turn, I believe, still believing that end hostilities was a possibility, trying to hedge off a little bit. But now it looks like Kennen's game plan is actually blockers and removal, which makes the attack last turn from Dylan basically throwing away a token for 2 points of damage very, very bad.
Donegan will take a draw step here. 5 lands in play, 4 goblins along with the Jeskai Ascendancy. One thing to keep in mind, too, 3 treasure cruisers are gone. He's discarded 2. He cast 1, but he got countered. So here's a Wild Slash. Looks like he's going upstairs with that. Trigger the Ascendancy, discard a Chivalry.
Well, I'm not sure if Ken's going to win this game, but you are seeing some week 1 action here.
Yes.
Because Dylan has played this game at several spots, anticipating Kennen playing a strategy he's not actually playing, having cards in his deck he doesn't actually have.
Haas is at 6. Donegan considering attack with these tokens, which are all 2/2s now, thanks to Jeskai Ascendancy. He'd lose 1.
Attack here is pretty safe. You're running 1 into a Dragon Lord, 1 into a Nyx Fleece Ram. Some are going unchecked. If Dylan has a removal spell, you get to see it.
Yep, here's a Stoke the Flames. That'll go upstairs, trigger the Ascendancy. And so what this will do is Dylan will draw and discard a card. He has no cards in his hand. Just another card in the graveyard for potential treasure cruise here. But what this does more importantly is it pumps the team.
So this is a very good play from Dylan because it means if Kennen's hand is just removal, that's no good here. I mean, if he has 2 removal spells he plays on, and if his hand's a counter spell, it's no good either. Because if Kennen can counter the Stoke the Flames, there's still 6 coming across. If Kennen only has 1 removal spell, one of your tokens comes across, and the 4 damage results from Stoke the Flames. So Kennen has to have a pretty specific hand here to be able to survive this.
Or a specific card, like Ojutai's Command.
Yes. Although I think most likely you would have seen Ojutai's Command there before blocks.
Most likely,
Well,
yes.
not necessarily, but and also how many Ojutai's Commands is your opponent playing? You've already seen 2, and I'm sure Dylan also is just happy to get that game over with because enough awkward stuff has happened that you don't want to give Kennen 1 more on tap.
Dylan Donegan does win game number 1 here over Kennen Haas. Jeskai tokens up a game here over Jeskai Control. To the sideboards we go, and we will start with Haas, hoping for some new cards over there.
It's got some juice here. Not really anything new, but definitely some good sideboard cards here. 2 copies of Anger the Gods, another copy of Dragon Lord Ojutai, an Aether Spouts, a Disdainful Stroke, 3 copies of Phyrexian Revoker, a Valorous Stance, a Nyx Fleece Ram, 2 copies of Bramaz, 2 copies of Negate. I like bringing in the Negates. I think the Anger of the Gods alongside the 4 toughness plan of cards like Dragon Lord Ojutai and Bramaz, very good here as well.
We'll go to Donegan's side. The Season 4 Invitational Champion of last year does have some Dragon Lord Ojutais of his own. He's got 2 of those. 4 Disdainful Strokes, a Negate, a Jeskai Charm, 2 Erases, 2 Valorous Stance, a couple copies of Arc Lightning, and a Dig Through Time.
So I like bringing in the anti-control cards here. I think the 4 copies of Disdainful Stroke are pretty powerful here. I think the Negate is as well. I like bringing in the Dig Through Time. I think the Dragon Lords are pretty solid for this matchup as well.
It'd be poor form if we didn't talk about Dylan's fantastic Elemental token that he did win for winning the Season 4 Invitational. This is obviously available, though we have another one coming, whoever wins this tournament, but you can still get this one.
Yeah, it's limited time only because we have more tokens coming down the pipeline, but if you sign up for any 20K Open Series event or a 5K Premier IQ, you get this token. Also, all orders from StarCityGames.com in excess of $5 will come with this token as well. But again, limited time offer, so if you want to get your Dylan Donegan Elemental token, either register for one of our Open Series events or place an order from StarCityGames.com today.
I suppose we could have another Dylan Donegan token on the way.
Yeah, we could.
Who are we to say he can't go back to back?
We saw back-to-back last year.
Yeah, this could certainly happen. Huh? Our invitational format has changed a little bit. No buys anymore. We give our buys in our normal Open Series events. Before we had our buys in invitationals and no buys in Open Series events, but once we changed the structure to a 2-day 20K Open Series main event, we decided to give buys there that you can earn various ways, and then no buys in our main events, which are our invitationals. So we have our best players playing all 16 rounds. We're starting with one of the very best here in Donegan.
Yeah, we just want to have the best players playing in our invitationals as many rounds as possible. And 2 buys when, it's an 8-round tournament and the cut to day 2 is often 5 and 3. That felt like too big of an advantage at times for our players with buys. So much happier with this setup.
Well, a lot of players for our defending champion to work through. 571 here in Richmond, our largest invitational ever. So many thanks to all the players that did come and do battle, but it's very clear players want to play some Dragon's Tarkir Standard. There is a Pro Tour in a couple weeks after all. Pro Tour Dragon's Tarkir in Brussels that I imagine a lot of players who are playing this tournament are probably watching this one.
I would have to believe so. You're not going to get a tournament of this size with this caliber of player to observe what's going on week 1. Now, how much of this will end up porting over to the Pro Tour, we'll see. That we're going to see some decks that are rough around the edges this weekend,
Absolutely.
to put it lightly. But the kernel of good ideas is what you're looking for if you're testing for the Pro Tour. If someone breaks it, that's great. But what you're hoping for is to see a list where I really like 57 of the 60 cards. And if I can change around the 3 or 4 cards I don't like, I feel like I've got a really good deck.
And we saw that when Constark here came out with Kevin Jones and his win. He nailed Jeskai the first tournament.
Exactly. He had the core of the deck. Now, again, some of the cards changed around. His list was not optimized in a couple of respects, but the core concept was there and definitely influenced what happened at the Pro Tour.
I miss Narset. I know it was big for Kevin that weekend. What do we got to do to get Narset in someone's deck?
Oh, we're going to see Narset this weekend.
I hope so. No, not that
Oh,
Narset.
the old Narset?
Oh, old Narset, not the Transcendent Narset.
I think that ship may have sailed.
Oh, that's too bad. Never say never, I suppose. Both players going to take a look at their opening hands here. Haas will be on the play. And he is a Legacy Open champion. First week last year when we were in Indianapolis, he won our Legacy Open with his crazy Entomb Life Alone. Just drag you through the mud deck.
He's also part of the Best of SCG Live.
Oh, yeah.
With the Helm of Obedience play.
He made Dan Musser famous.
Yep.
We got ourselves a Dragon Fodder, 2 Goblin tokens. As Haas going to sacrifice his Flooded Strand.
It's a subtle update, but it's just so good for this deck to have access to more reasonable 2-mana plays.
2 tokens for 2 mana. Also, they're red tokens for Stoke the Flames.
Yep.
Goblins for Goblin Rabble Master. It might seem like a small one, like you said, but it all adds up.
The deck's biggest vulnerability has always been the curve, in my opinion.
Yep.
And the curve got a lot better. And it's not really that big of a cost to power because most of the power of this deck is coming from Jeskai Ascendancy anyway, and Treasure Cruise. And arguably, Treasure Cruise gets better in this deck now that there's access to more reliable, cheap spells like Dragon Fodder and Anticipate.
Yeah, the nice thing is that your creatures, I use creatures liberally here, but your creatures are actually spells that go in the graveyard for Treasure Cruise.
Yep.
And they're spells that trigger Jeskai Ascendancy, so it all works really, really well for the deck. And Anticipate here from Haas.
Yeah, the 2 drops like Seeker of the Way always felt like a necessary evil for this deck.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather have a spell for a variety of reasons, but you just can't say go on turn 2 every single game. And so Dragon Fodder is definitely a weaker card objectively, but it might fit the role for this deck better.
An Island from Haas and a passing of the turn represents a couple things, but we did see Dissolve last game. Donegan going to try to figure out how he wants to move forward for his 3rd turn of the game. He'll start by playing a Battlefield Forge, coming to the red zone. 2 points of damage will come across. Haas down to 17. Now, we know this deck has plenty of 3-mana spells. He'll start off by casting a Whirling Outburst. That will be dissolved. So Haas will get the opportunity to scry here. That top card looks like it's headed to the bottom, and it is. And we will head back Kennen's way. He'll take a draw step. Fourth land enters the battlefield tapped. It's a copy of Temple of Epiphany. Top card is the Temple of Enlightenment. Looks like he's happy leaving that on top and will pass the turn. Donegan will take a draw step. Shivan Reef has been added to the grip. Jeskai Ascendancy there as well. Perhaps Whirling Outburst was the bait spell.
And Kennen obviously gripping a handful of spells since he left Temple of Enlightenment on top of the deck. I believe Dig Through Time in his hand as well here. Just trying to stave off Dylan's early offense and get to a spot where he can dig on a stable board.
Dylan says, I'll start by attacking for 2. Haas going to go down to 15. There is a Reef and just a passing of the turn. Donegan unwilling to commit his Jeskai Ascendancy to the board. It was so good game 1.
And I think he just assumes that Ken's got some sort of counterspell ready, which Ken does in fact have.
Mm-hmm.
But Ken may be able to use his mana left over this turn to Anticipate.
You can see when we saw Donegan last turn, as here's another Anticipate from Haas, just how unsure he is kind of moving forward. Last game, and this one a little bit as well, where he'd like to commit more threats to the table, or that Jeskai Ascendancy, I imagine, but not entirely sure what Haas has in his deck.
Especially post-board,
Yeah.
where if anything, Ken's ratcheted up the amount of removal and amount of sweepers he has available as well.
Here's a Temple. Take a look at the top card. That stays on top rather quickly.
It's an Aether Spouts, Kennen with 1 in the main deck and 1 in the sideboard.
Here's an Anticipate. Both players using this new instant. It's going to be a popular one.
Anticipate also pairs very well with Disdainful Stroke because there's a lot of spots where your opponent says, I'm not casting into your Disdainful Stroke, and having something to do with your mana left over is very, very good.
2 more damage. There's Dig Through Time. And there's Disdainful Stroke. So fair enough. Haas will take a draw. Aether Spouts is what he's found. A Plains will come into play. Always interesting to see Aether Spouts. It's a card that really no one plays around.
It's rare, and I actually think people fail to play around it to a fault. I think people's alpha strikes on last turns are pretty sloppy sometimes with Aether Spouts in the format. Not very good here as Dylan's playing a much slower game, not flooding the board with a bunch of tokens.
I'm sure Kennen would like it if he would. And he might just have to catch an Aether Spouts here, which isn't the sexiest play. But it's a little bit of a reprieve.
He's got to find something to do with his turn. You know, if he's not making his land drops, he's not in a position to dig through time right now. It's hard to just untap and say go and take these hits, especially against a deck that plays with as much burn as Jeskai Tokens does.
And Haas is strongly considering the Aether Spouts here. It's clear it's not something he wants to cast. He wants to get full value. There's so many tokens in the deck.
I think it's good enough, and with another dig through time in his hand, I feel like he can't cast nothing this turn.
Well, he did. Draw was a Temple of Triumph. He'll play that. He'll scry. Top card going to go to the bottom.
Especially because Dylan's not doing anything, so you can assume that his hand is also reactive cards.
Here's Raise the Alarm.
So it's tough to take these shots and then say, now I'm going to get you.
Yep.
Because there's no guarantee he's going to be able to get him with whatever big removal spell or big threat he's sandbagging.
There's Stoke that goes upstairs. So Haas is down to 7. There's also no guarantee that this Spouts resolves.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like Kennen just has to punch his way through whatever reactive cards Dylan has in his hand and set up this dig through time. It's really hard to take these kind of shots when Dylan is probably playing with negates and disdainful strokes of his own. And there's no guarantee you get to resolve your big play somewhere down the line.
Daniel will take a draw, still has Jeskai Ascendancy in his hand. See if he's willing to cast it this turn or not. Seen some patience from the defending Invitational champion. There's Ascendancy.
And this is a spot now where if Kennen's willing to counter this Ascendancy, Dylan's pretty happy. Because he has free reign to do whatever else he wants on the follow-up.
There's the Spouts. Dylan gonna take a look. Bad time to be reading that one. All those creatures are gone, my friend. Now Dylan, of course, looked like he was gonna go for the win that turn. Attack, play Wild Slash.
Yep.
Trigger the Ascendancy, deal a whole bunch of damage. Now if you're Haas, you're doing okay now. If you can get that Ascendancy off the board, you're actually doing really good.
That's the big problem. Is Kennen's deck still not really well equipped to get the card off the table? So now Kennen needs to close the door pretty quickly. He needs to get something like Dragon Lord Ojutai onto the table, something to sweep things up pretty fast, because if he tries to play draw go from here and still try to contain Dylan's board but leaving the Ascendancy unchecked, I don't think he can win that sort of game long term.
Well, we saw how that worked game 1.
Yeah.
Did not work very well. Mystic Monastery passing of the turn. That's probably not as innocent as it looks.
No.
I'll say that. Haas gonna go reaching. Looks like it is time to dig through some time. That does get the thumbs up, perhaps from Donegan. Dylan gonna go reaching himself. He'll play his own dig through time.
A lot of looks at negate or disdainful stroke if Dylan wants it.
He'll start by drawing and discarding. Start to fill up that graveyard yet again. And discards a copy of Wild Slash. Now it's time to dig. Donegan will take a look at the top 7. Well, he found something he liked real fast. Yep, there's your counterspell. Good turn there for Dylan.
Turn's not even over. Gets to loot again.
He gets to loot again from the stroke. Sentency's really fun and fair.
Yep. I don't know, if you're in the fun is zero sum land, then it's as fun as every other card.
I kind of am, so. Soulfire Grandmaster here for Haas.
Every card is equally fun.
Donegan reaching very quickly. Looks like a dragon fodder. It is. Trigger Ascendancy. You can see just how heavy Ascendancy looms over this game. Donegan again discard a copy of Dragonlord Ojutai. He's boarded those in. Got 2 Goblin tokens. It's so different when he doesn't have Ascendancy. Haas can do the one-for-one trading he wants to do.
Yep, absolutely. Aether Spouts might have been a game winner there.
Yeah.
If Dylan didn't have Ascendancy, but because Dylan does have Ascendancy, Kennen needs to either get it off the table or generate some huge trump.
Now he just can't do the trading he wants to. And his deck is Jeskai control, obviously, but it's kind of like a Soulfire Grandmaster control deck. You know, he's got Dissolve in his hand right now. He can loop that a little bit.
Maybe,
he gets in the right spots.
It's still hard to do the looping because you're playing against a deck that has counters of its own post-board.
Yep. Raise the alarm here. 2 soldier tokens will come in. Donegan, I think, feels like the coast is clear. Here's a Treasure Cruise.
Coast is clear for Ancestral Recall, you don't say?
Yeah. Oh, gotta trigger the Ascendancy first. Thank you much. We might see Haas counter this before the draw and discard occurs. Doesn't want to give Donegan another look at perhaps a counterspell to fight back. Let's not forget those tokens out there. They're 2/2s now, thanks to Jeskai Ascendancy.
Now I think Kennen has to debate between, does he dissolve and Soulfire Grandmaster the dissolve, or does he dissolve and leave dissolve, the second dissolve in his hand available?
It's bad news all around.
Because he's a mana short of having access to both. No, actually, he's several mana short. So no, he's just going to let this go, I suppose.
There goes Dragonlord Ojutai. 3 cards coming. Seems as though Haas is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Yep.
Here come the tokens. Another copy of Aether Spouts.
Yeah, this makes sense why he didn't fight over the Treasure Cruise, because
Yes,
he wants
it
to try
does.
to do this with Dissolve backup.
Yep. And here's Dissolve. This might work out okay. It looks like it will work out okay.
And if the last card in Kennen's hand is a Dissolve, that's pretty attractive.
The loop-de-loop.
Yeah, he's got a loop going. I still think he's going to be hard-pressed to win with an unchecked Ascendancy, but he's got a little something going then.
Holding Outburst is the card discarded. Haas wins that war. Donegan will pass the turn back, raise the alarm at the ready. Now, Donegan could have played Dragon Fodder that turn. He elected not to.
Probably just trying to overwhelm his mana in one turn.
Here is raise. Jeskai Ascendancy trigger. Anticipate the draw. We'll see what Donegan wants to discard. He'll discard Ascendancy. I think we're going to see a dissolve with the rebuy.
Yeah, I mean, the coast is clear. Ken doesn't want to get into a counterspell war in this sequence, so
not
if he
at all.
can cash it in while the getting's good, he would be well served to do so.
There's the activation. Here's a negate. This is actually even better than dissolve, because now he's got mana to negate.
And he doesn't have to show that he has dissolve also.
Yep. Not bad. See if Donegan can overwhelm these counter spells. He'll start with a Dragon Fodder. That'll trigger Ascendancy. Haas will think on it. Does he want to counter it before the Ascendancy draw discard or after it?
Or does he even want to counter at all?
That's also a question. He's starting to get to the point where he doesn't want any of those creatures in play, though.
It's tough because, you know, it's so nice for Ken to have this kind of loop going of counter spells and Soulfire Grandmaster. But it's almost like every spell Dylan resolves is problematic. It's either something that generates a bunch of tokens, something that kills the Soulfire Grandmaster, another Treasure Cruise.
Something that draws 3 cards. One could argue a 4th one because of Jeskai Ascendancy. He's able to just power through this.
Right. So Dylan can cheaply and efficiently overwhelm even, you know, effectively Isochron Scepter with Counterspell on it right now.
Yeah. Looks like Donegan's going to take 1. There's Wild Slash. Get that thing out of here. Take a draw and discard. There goes Mystic Monastery. He'll just pass the turn back. Impressive turn there for Dylan. All fueled by Jeskai Ascendancy.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another Grandmaster. Donegan will draw a card. Here's 3 mana. Whirling Outburst. Dylan says, come on, let me keep going.
Yeah. Well, right now Dylan's saying just don't have a negate here.
Yeah.
Because he gets to loop the negate. Yeah, Dylan will live with Dissolve. Because it means it's not coming back to the hand.
Yep. Card stays on top for Haas. But he's got no cards in hand. All he's got is the top of his deck. Must be good enough to keep with the Dissolve Scry. Donegan will just pass the turn back. There's a Dragon Fodder, excuse me. Draw and discard. There goes a Flooded Strand. 2 goblins coming. Let's see what Kennen kept. Looks like Bermaz. Here's an attack. 11-7 now in favor of Haas. There's the King of Oreskos. Donegan will draw. 6 life for him.
He's taking quite a bit of damage here from his pain lands.
Yep. He's got to take another one, it looks like, too. This doesn't look good. Draw, discard. Down to 5 now.
Yeah, but this might be one of those chump blocking with Bermaz type of turns. Because Dylan's just going to generate so much power.
With how quickly he played that second Ascendancy, I would be pretty scared. There's a Raise the Alarm. That'll trigger Ascendancy twice. Those creatures get pretty big. This is a chump blocking turn now. I suppose. Now here's a Stoke the Flames. Yeah, this one is. This one's another Stoke the Flames. Just gotta say, this is good Magic cards.
That's tons of fun.
Yeah, if you weren't aware, it's a good Magic card. Dylan won his Invitational with it in Seattle last year. He's off to a great start this year.
Still good. Still very powerful.
He wins this match 2-0 over Kennen Haas. Jeskai tokens, take it down. Welcome to your new standard format. Kind of the same as your old standard format.
Well, the curve's gotten a lot better.
Yes.
That's a huge deal there. But you can see Kennen's deck definitely had the tools there. There was a lot of powerful stuff going on his side of the table. He just needed a way to get Ascendancy off the table because I feel like both games he's in really good shape if Dylan doesn't have Ascendancy. But Dylan was able to stick it, and it's 2